The laughing chamber, the great hall of Velcrin Prime, shimmered with light as representatives from over 20 alien species gathered for what was called the Alliance's Unity Exhibition, a celebration of peace, trade, and mutual strength among them. Stood tall beings with horns, glowing skin, armored scales, and elegant forms that floated rather than walked. Their weapons were ceremonial, their laughter loud and echoing through the chamber, but the focus of attention that day was not one of their own. It was a lone human. Sergeant Cole Mercer stood in the middle of the arena, wearing only his Earth-grade armored suit, his body tense, but his face calm. He had been chosen to represent humanity in the trial of endurance, a showcase where each species demonstrated a unique strength. The Velcrins had survived inside the vacuum of space for 30 seconds. The Yllari had bent steel with their mind. The Kreviks had walked through acid and emerged with only a few melted scales. Now it was the humans. Turn. The alien announcer's voice rang across the Colosseum, and everyone leaned forward, ready to watch the so-called fragile species perform. Their whispers were cruel, their expectations low. Some snickered, some openly pointed. What can humans do? They bleed too easily, they break under pressure, they grow old and slow fast, said a Kravix noble with a sharp tail flicking behind him. Cole glanced toward the humans seated far behind. Bulletproof glass ambassadors, scientists, even his captain. They all looked nervous but nodded to him. He gave a quick salute and stepped forward. From above, a drone hovered down carrying a steel sphere. The rules were clear. No tech, no armor, just endurance. The drone released the sphere, and it struck Cole on the side of his ribs with a crack. The sound of bone breaking echoed through the hall, and the audience gasped in satisfaction. Cole dropped to one knee, clutching his side as the alien laughter exploded louder than ever. Some clapped, others mocked. They cannot even stand after that, said one of the officials, wiping tears of laughter. A Velcrin child pointed and said, why do they cry from a single hit? Cole stayed down, breathing heavy. His skin had already turned pale from the internal damage. His ribs were shattered. Blood filled his mouth as he coughed. But then something began to happen. A hum started in the air. It was not a machine. It was not music. It came from the subtle shift inside Cole's body. His muscles began to twitch. His bones realigned. Slowly, in front of everyone's eyes, a deep, silent glow moved under his skin as stem cells activated at lightning speed. Laughter faded one by one as aliens leaned forward, squinting. Is that a trick? Said one in disbelief. No tech detected, said another, monitoring the scanners. He is doing it on his own. Cole's breathing steadied. His fingers loosened from the side of his chest as the pain reduced minute by minute. His broken ribs visibly pushed themselves back into place, and his skin began to seal over the bruises as silence fell over the laughing chamber. A Yllari medic dropped her scanner in shock and stepped closer to the glass, whispering something to her commander. The Kravix noble who had laughed earlier stepped back, eyes wide, and his tail stopped moving completely. Cole finally stood up, not fully healed, but no longer broken. He spat out a chunk of dried blood onto the floor and looked up straight into the eyes of the announcer. You want to see what we are made of, he said. Low but firm. Then you better look closer. The announcer had no words. The drone stopped recording. The audience was frozen between awe and confusion. Some species had never seen a broken bone. Some had no concept of internal healing. Cole took a deep breath and raised his arms once more, and the chamber that had once been filled with laughter now watched in silence. The shadows of the upper seats, a young alien with soft blue skin and wide luminous eyes, stared with growing curiosity. She tapped her communicator and whispered to her superior. They called them fragile, she said, but I think we have made a terrible mistake. As the hall slowly emptied and Cole was escorted back, the murmurs began to spread, not just inside Velcrin Prime, but through the communication sent to every part of the galaxy. A new rumor was born that day, one that started with laughter, but ended with something far more dangerous: fear and awe. The healing begins. The halls of Velcrin Prime were no longer filled with laughter. Since the day the human named Cole had stood back up with shattered ribs realigned, flesh sealing itself without medicine and pain melting like ice on fire. The footage had spread across systems, despite the Council's orders to suppress it, and though many tried to label it as trickery or illusion, a growing number of scientists, medics, and rulers began whispering the same word regeneration on the icy moon of Draxel. A young alien medic named Shy of the Talari clan sat in her lab watching the recording over and over again. Her hands shook each time Cole stood up. Her species were advanced in genetic repair, but it took them weeks to regrow even a portion of damaged tissue. But here was a human healing with nothing more than breath. And time. She turned to her elder mentor and said, "We need to study this. We need to know if it is real." Her mentor shook his head, saying, "You are chasing shadows. Humans are chaotic, unstable. They are not like us." But Shy was not convinced. Meanwhile, deep in the tunnels of a gas giant station known as Garalis 12, the story of the humans' recovery reached the ears of Lord Zul, a ruler of the Trenok Dominion. His people had long despised humans for their unpredictability, but this rumor intrigued him. "If what they say is true," he growled, "then they are not weak, they are evolving, and evolution that fast is a threat to our dominance." Sent an order to his captains, "I want a living human, bring one with combat training and wounds to study how long it takes to repair the damage and how deep we must cut before they break back on Earth." The United Space Alliance had caught wind of this and placed Cole in secure medical observation. The doctors ran scans, tests, probes, and simulations, but his body showed no signs of enhancement or cybernetic healing. It was natural, and it was terrifying even to them. Dr. Reyes, one of the lead researchers, said, "It is not just him. His cells are behaving like they are 10 years younger. His heart rate stabilizes even after internal trauma. We have never seen anything like this." Cole sat on a bed sipping water, watching scientists through the glass like an animal in a cage. But he did not feel trapped. He felt watched, and not just by humans. In the depths of the research station orbiting Earth, an unauthorized transmission broke through the CUM system. Shy had hacked her way into their network using an ancient forgotten frequency designed during the early peace treaties. She left a message, "I do not want to harm him. I only want to understand it," reached Cole's private screen. He stared at the alien script, translating slowly, and smiled. "Tell me what you want to know," he replied, "but do not try to lock me in a cage back on Draxel 1. Shy gasped as the human replied. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with excitement. He was willing to talk. "No weapons, no guards, just knowledge." She sent back a question. "How did it start? When did you first feel it?" Cole wrote back after, "I got caught in an explosion on Mars. They said I would not walk again, but 3 months later I was running. I thought I was just lucky, but then I got stabbed in the lungs during a raid and survived that too. I stopped going to hospitals. I just waited and healed." Shy read the words again and again, her mind spinning. This was not magic. It was mutation. No, it was more. It was intentional biological acceleration. Her claws clicked on the keyboard, and she sent one last message before the connection closed. "You are not fragile. You are dangerous and beautiful." While that quiet communication took place, Lord Zul's forces located a human survey team exploring a remote jungle planet known as Sarek 9. They launched a false distress signal and waited. Captain Mira of the human ship responded immediately, unaware of the trap. She brought 3 of her crew down, including a young Marine named Hayes who had once served with Cole. As soon as they landed, an energy blast took out their cums, and drones poured from the trees, stunning them before they could run. Mira was captured. Hayes tried to fight, but took a blast to his chest, burning through armor and muscle. The Trenok soldiers dragged him back to the ship, while one of them said, "Careful. He might get back up like the other one." Lord Zul watched the feed as Hayes was strapped to a cold slab, his chest rising and falling, barely alive. "Now we wait," he said, "and see if the legends are true." Back in orbit above Earth, Cole felt something shift in his gut. He did not know why, but a deep instinct born of survival whispered in his mind, "Someone just like you is in danger." The abduction. The jungle planet of Sarek 9 was a place of silence and shadows where the trees rose higher than ships. and the air itself seemed to breathe. The leaves were soaked in moisture, and the ground pulsed with quiet tremors from the roots below. But that day the jungle had no peace because something unnatural had arrived. Captain Mira struggled against the energy cuffs wrapped around her wrists, her eyes locked on the slab where Hayes lay unconscious, his chest scorched by the weapon blast. His armor melted into his skin, but he was not dead, and that alone terrified the Trenic soldiers. They had never seen such slow yet determined survival in any species. Hayes was supposed to be a specimen, something they could poke, measure, and tear apart, but his body refused to die, and that single act of resistance made the guards step back more than once inside the observation chamber above the jungle lab. Lord Zool watched the feed with interest while his scientists stood behind him whispering about cellular repair rates, oxygen retention, blood clotting factors, but none of it mattered to Zool. I do not care how it works. I want to know how to break it. Hayes began to stir his breath, shallow his fingers twitching. Blood crusted on the edges of his burn, yet under the skin something moved, a slow ripple of cells, rebuilding what had been destroyed tissue, crawling together like an army of healers working without rest. The scientists gasped, and one of them dropped their scanner, the graphs spiking without explanation. They said his white blood cells are creating a new layer of dermal tissue. There is no infection, no fever, no rejection. Myra leaned forward against the restraints and whispered, "You see us as soft. That is only because you never stayed long enough to see us stand back up." Zool turned to his commander. "Bring the female to the lower cells. She speaks two Mushas." Mira was dragged away. Hayes opened his eyes and blinked at the light, his brain fogged, but his instinct sharp. He saw the alien faces above him, their metal masks, their fear hiding behind questions and wires. "Where is my captain?" he mumbled, voice hoarse and dry. "You should not be alive," one of them hissed. Hayes looked down at his chest and saw the burned skin, now a red scab. The pain was still there, but it felt distant, like it belonged to yesterday. He grinned weakly. "Get used to disappointment." Somewhere far beyond Sarek 9, Cole Mercer sat alone in a training room, punching the reinforced wall again and again, sweat pouring from his forehead, each strike harder than the last. Something inside him burned, something primal, something alert. He stopped and looked up toward the stars, eyes narrowing. "I know that feeling. Someone is out there, someone who needs Maine." A dark room on Draxel. One Shy stared at a new signal intercept showing a human signature in the jungle planet. She traced the energy pattern, and her heart sank. It matched one of the soldiers who once served under Cole. "They caught another one," she whispered, and then looked at the message still saved on her screen. Cole's words from before. "Tell me what you want to know." She pressed the button to open a direct link. "Cole, I found one of your kind. He is trapped, and they are watching him like they watched you, but this time they are not laughing. They are afraid." Cole read the message, and his body froze. Then, without a word, he left the training room and stormed into the command center where the Earth ambassador was reviewing Alliance reports. "I need clearance to leave orbit now," Cole said, his voice firm and eyes glowing with something beyond anger. The ambassador frowned. "Why, and where do you think you are going?" "They have Hayes." That name alone brought silence into the room. "He was one of our best," the ambassador whispered, then nodded. "Slowly get him back, but be careful. They are not mocking US anymore. They are preparing for us." Cole stepped onto a private stealth ship designed for recon missions and programmed it toward Sarek 9. He sent one final message to Shy before jumping into warp. "Keep your eyes open and get ready, because the moment I touch down they will know what regeneration really means." Back on Sarek 9, the lab lights flickered as Hayes broke free from his restraints with a strength the Trenic had not predicted. His skin still raw, but his muscles steady. He grabbed a shard of metal and stood tall, blood dripping from his army. "Told you, we are not fragile," he said as he smashed the console beside him, triggering alarms across the entire station. Lord Zool snarled and slammed his fist into the command panel. "Prepare the hunters. Do not let him reach the jungle." But it was too late. Hayes had already disappeared into the trees. The forest welcomed him not as prey, but as a wounded warrior on the run and above in the sky. A human ship sliced through the clouds and descended without warning. The hunter had arrived. Truth revealed. Hayes ran through the jungle with fire in his lungs and pain in his legs. But still he kept going. The trees cut his skin. The thorns scraped his arms, yet even as blood spilled, his wounds closed slowly and silently behind him, his body becoming something alien to the land yet stronger than it had ever been before. He did not know how far he had gone, or how long he had been running, but he knew one thing: they were behind him, and they were afraid. The Trenuk soldiers followed using trackers and beasts trained to hunt injured prey, but this prey would not fall. His body left no scent, no thermal traces. Cells kept shifting, repairing, hiding his presence without conscious thought. In the lab above the jungle, Lord Zul stared at the shattered table where Hayes once lay. The metal restraints, twisted from strength that should not exist, turned to his top scientist, a pale-skinned alien with 4 eyes and no mouth, and said, "Explain to me how he does this." The scientist tapped on a floating display showing scans and graphs. Their bodies do not stop healing. It is as if every cell is alert. Every cell is trained not to accept death, not to surrender even when logic says they should fall. They keep standing. Zul growled and said, "Then give me one who will fall. I want to see where the limit lies. I want to see how far we must break them to reach the end." Scientist hesitated and then said, "We found another one, a human who has already shown this trait. We tracked him leaving Earth. He will arrive in hours." Zul smiled. "Finally, we will see the edge of their strength, above the planet in the cold orbit." Cole stood in his ship, scanning the surface, his eyes focused, and his jaw locked. The jungle shimmered below, thick with clouds. Interference, but he did not need sensors to know Hayes was alive. He could feel it in his bones. The same way he felt his own wounds before they healed, the same way animals sense a storm before it breaks. He turned on his ship's cloak and dropped into the atmosphere, silent as a ghost. Meanwhile, on Draxel, one Shy sat alone, watching every signal leak from Sarek 9, her fingers tapping furiously on her console. She had rerouted a satellite and hacked into Trenuk frequency. She knew she was breaking 10 Alliance laws, but she did not care. She saw the scan of Cole's ship entering the sky. She saw the reports of Hayes breaking out, and she saw one more thing: a strange energy signature surrounding both of them, something not mechanical, not digital, but biological. It pulsed like a second heartbeat, a rhythm of life fighting against logic. She whispered to herself, "They are not evolving by accident, they are evolving for war." In the jungle, Hayes collapsed near a waterfall, gasping for air, his body a map of cuts and bruises, but none of them fresh, none of them bleeding. He looked at his reflection in the water and saw something he had never seen before. His eyes were sharper, his muscles tighter, his skin thicker, and beneath it all, a glow faint and soft, as if his blood had turned into starlight. He heard footsteps and raised his weapon, but lowered it just as fast. Cole emerged from the trees, calm and silent, his face unreadable until he saw Hayes, and then he smiled. "You look like hell." Hayes laughed and said, "You should see the other guys." They embraced for a moment, 2 soldiers now, something more than human. Cole checked his vitals and said, "You are healing faster than expected. I need to get you out of here before they send something stronger." But Hayes shook his head and said, "They are not just studying us, Cole. They are testing limits. They want to see how far we can go before we stop healing." Cole nodded. "I figured as much. They want to know the edge of our endurance. But they are going to learn something else instead." "What is that?" "There is no edges." They spoke. A soft hum filled the air, and the trees shifted. Something massive approached. Not a beast, not a soldier, but a machine with claws that tore through the earth and scanners that could see through flesh. Zul had sent his final test, a synthetic hunter, built to destroy even the most durable enemies. A machine with one command: keep breaking until nothing remains. Cole looked at Hayes and said, "You ready?" Hayes picked up a stone and grinned. "Not really, but that never stopped me before." The machine dropped into the clearing and opened fire. The ground exploded, the air filled with dust and heat. Cole shoved Hayes aside and charged straight into the blast, his body thrown back, his arm torn open, his side scorched, but he did not stop. He kept running through fire, through metal, through pain that should have ended him. Machine turned its focus on him and delivered another blow, this time snapping bones and sending Cole crashing into a tree. But before the dust settled, Cole stood up, his bones popping back into place, his wounds sealing his skin, pulling itself together like wet clay, hardening in seconds. From the lab, Zool watched in stunned silence, his fingers trembling, his voice low. This is not healing, this is defiance, the great escape. Ground shook under the force of the synthetic hunter as it charged once more toward Cole, who stood bloodied but unbroken, his breath heavy but steady, his body still glowing faintly from the power that had awakened deep within every part of his being. Hayes shouted from behind the broken tree line, trying to reach Cole, but the flames and debris made it impossible. The machine roared with cold precision, its weapons spinning, its scanners locked, but still Cole did not run. He stepped forward again. One step, then another, his leg dragging behind, slightly fractured from the last impact, but his muscles already pushing the bone back into position. He raised his fists, no shields, no armor, no tech, just will, and a body that refused to die. The machine lunged, and Cole dodged, just barely sliding beneath its arm and punching upward into the synthetic joint, metal bent not from strength alone, but from precision. Driven by purpose, the hunter stumbled. Cole climbed its back and slammed his hand into an exposed panel, ripping wires as sparks danced around him. The machine responded with a violent thrash, throwing Cole into a boulder that cracked under the force. Hayes rushed forward now, not waiting, not thinking. He grabbed the same shard he had escaped with and hurled it into the hunter's leg, striking something vital, and for the first time the machine slowed. Cole stood once more, staggering, coughing, tasting blood that faded too quickly as the healing began again. He shouted Hayes now. Hayes nodded and activated a hidden beacon on his belt. A short burst signal meant only for emergency use, the frequency coded only for Earth vessels in orbit. Shy saw the signal. She had been monitoring every inch of the jungle from the moment Cole had arrived. And now the call was made. Her hands moved fast, activating a stealth shuttle hidden near the planet's second moon. She whispered, "You better survive this, Cole, because I am risking everything for you back on the ground." The hunter readjusted its targeting systems, but too late. Cole and Hayes were already moving together, dodging, rolling, striking weak points. They fought not like soldiers, but like survivors. Like animals backed into a corner, but refusing to fall. The machine roared one last time and exploded in a burst of fire and smoke, the shockwave ripping through the clearing as Hayes and Cole hit the ground hard but alive, barely breathing but alive. Shy's shuttle pierced through the clouds and landed within seconds, its ramp opening as she stepped out, eyes wide with shock at the sight of the two humans covered in blood, dirt and smoke. But standing tall, she ran to Cole and shouted, "You mad? Impossible. Man, how are you still alive?" Cole grinned weakly and said, "Habit." Hayes fell onto the ramp, laughing, breathless, every bone in his chest aching but already mending. The shuttle lifted into the sky just as Trennock soldiers arrived, too late, weapons raised. Eyes filled with disbelief, they fired a few desperate shots, but Shy was already weaving through clouds, leaving Sarek 9 behind inside the ship. Shy tended to Cole and Hayes, her fingers scanning their bodies, her mind racing. She said, "I knew you were strong, but this is beyond anything I imagined. Your cells, your minds, even your pain tolerance is changing." Cole looked at her and said, "We were always changing. We just never had the pressure to show it." Hayes chuckled, "You break us, we come back stronger. You crush us, we heal harder." Shy sat down across from them, eyes filled with wonder and fear. "The galaxy thought you were fragile," Cole replied. "We let them think that it kept us safe. Not anymore." Shy whispered, "Not after this." They all saw what happened on that field, the machines, the wounds, the fire. They saw you get up when no one else could. They saw what it means to be human in the shadows of a hidden base. Lord Zool stood before a council of silent watchers. His pride shattered, his machines destroyed, his enemy escaped. Clenched his fists and said, "We need new weapons. We need to understand what they are." One of the elders said, "You tried to break them, and all you did was teach them how to bend." Another said, "They will not stop now. They will come back, and this time they will not come alone." Far from the council chamber, Cole stood at a window of the shuttle watching the stars pass, his body bruised but healing his heart. Steady Hayes sat beside him, quiet for a long time, then asked, "You think they will come after us again?" Cole nodded. "Probably, but next time they will not be laughing. Next time they will be preparing for war." The shift in power. The stars outside the shuttle window no longer felt distant. They felt like watchers, silent and ever-present, as if the galaxy itself was waiting for what came next. Cole stood still, arms crossed, eyes locked on the black void beyond, while Hayes rested against the wall, his body almost fully healed, his burns now smooth skin, his broken bones now stronger than before, and Shy moved between them with her scanner, whispering calculations. None of them understood, but all of them felt deep inside their bones. Cole finally spoke in a low voice. "What happens now?" Shy looked up, her eyes wide with something between awe and dread. She said, "You do not understand what you have done." The footage of the Hunter fight has already spread. The entire star system knows. Now every Alliance Council, every species, even the fringe colonies are watching, and they are not sure if they should fear you or follow you. Hayes laughed softly and said, "Maybe both." Cole turned away from the window and faced them. "What are they saying?" Shy sat down, her fingers tapping nervously against the console. She said, "They are calling you many things, the regenerating warriors, the undying flesh, the cursed miracle, but the name I hear most is the unbroken." Cole felt a chill, not from fear, but from something deeper, something heavier, responsibility. On the council world of Serenex, the Alliance members had gathered for an emergency session. The chamber was full, the air thick with silence, and every screen showed the same moment over and over. Cole standing from the explosion, Hayes dodging plasma fire, the synthetic hunter destroyed by men with no shields and no fear. An elder of the Aquari species said, "We mocked them. We tested them, we measured them, and we called them weak." A general from the Crovan species said, "They are not weak. They are weapons, and they do not even know how powerful they are." Yet another voice from the back spoke with calm precision, "I warned you. I told you Earth breeds under pressure. They do not evolve like us. They adapt by burning, and when they are burned enough, they stop dying back." On Earth, Cole, Hayes, and Shy arrived at the United Space Alliance's High Command Station orbiting the planet. They were greeted by a line of armored guards, but none raised weapons. Instead, they saluted, a show of respect, not just for rank, but for something greater. The Earth ambassador approached them, his face stern, but eyes flickering with something new. "Pride," he said. "We received the recordings. The entire council is shaken, and the Alliance has changed its stance on humanity. They no longer see us as junior members. They want us on the high table." Cole said, "And what do we want?" The ambassador paused, then looked Cole in the eyes and said, "We want peace, but we will not beg for it. And if they come, we will be ready." Hayes grinned and said, "Ready and unbroken." Later in the command chamber, the footage was reviewed again and again, scientists arguing over regeneration speeds, politicians arguing about treaties, military leaders discussing new protocols. But in the corner of the room, Shy stood quiet, her eyes on a slow replay of Cole rising from the ashes, his skin torn, his breath labored, but his feet steady. She whispered to herself, "This is not science. This is defiance wrapped in flesh. This is war given form." And soul news across the galaxy spread quickly. Some species began rethinking their alliances. Some began preparing their own enhancements. Some considered treaties with Earth, not out of respect but out of fear. In a distant moon, a group of young warriors in training watched the footage, and one of them said, "I want to be like them. I want to never fall in another world." A ruler stared at the same video and said, "They will be our doom unless they are our allies." Cole sat alone on the balcony of the space station watching Earth spin slowly beneath him. Hayes walked over carrying 2 mugs of thick protein drink and handed one to him. Hayes said, "You ever think about how fast this all happened? 1 minute we are getting laughed at, and now we are sitting on top of the stars." Cole took the drink and said, "Fast is what humans do best. We run, we fall, we bleed, and then we stand again." Before anyone else can understand how Shy joined them, her hands behind her back, her expression unreadable, she said, "The council will ask you to speak. They want your opinion on the new alliance reforms." They want to hear from the man who bled and lived. Cole looked up and said, I will speak, but not for me, for every human who ever heard they were too weak, too soft, too slow, for every one of us who broke and got back up anyway. Shy smiled softly and said, then speak as the unbroken, not as a warrior, but as what you truly are, the first of a new kind, rise of the undying. The council chamber on Serenex was nothing like. Earth-polished obsidian walls stretched high into the sky, shaped by ancient alien hands and lined with banners of every species. In the Galactic Alliance, giant orbs hovered silently, broadcasting the event across thousands of systems in a dozen languages. The seats were filled with leaders, rulers, scientists, and generals, but all eyes watched one figure as he stepped into the circle. Cole Mercer. He wore no armor, no medals, just a dark suit woven with adaptive fibers. His body still carried faint marks of battle, but his eyes held something stronger, a presence that made even the most arrogant races lean forward in silence. Shy stood beside him, not as a translator, but as witness. Hayes watched from the upper gallery, arms crossed, healed and proud, ready for whatever this moment would bring. The High Speaker, an elder being with golden eyes, spoke first. We welcome the representative from Earth, Sergeant Cole Mercer. We ask that you speak truthfully so the stars may record this day without distortion. Cole stepped forward. The silence deepened as he looked around at beings who once laughed at his people, who once dismissed them as weak and fragile and expendable. He took a breath, steady and calm, then began. You wanted to know what humans are made of. You thought you could measure it with wounds and explosions, with blood and broken bones. But what you do not understand is that we are not defined by what breaks us. We are defined by how we come back from it. The chamber stayed quiet. No one interrupted. You burned us, you cut us, you laughed when we fell, but you did not see what happened after the cameras stopped. You did not see the nights we stitched ourselves back together, or the mornings we stood when our bodies screamed to stay down. You did not see the fear turn to fuel, the pain turned to strength, the failure turned to fire. Cole paused, his voice still calm but heavier now. You call us dangerous. Now you say we are unpredictable, that our regeneration makes us a threat. But we were always a threat, not because we heal fast, not because we fight hard, but because we never stop. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of generals, kings, and scientists. We are the result of pressure. We are the answer to pain. We are the product of a planet that teaches its children to survive before they speak. And when we came to the stars, we did not leave that behind. We brought it with you. Raised his hand and pointed toward the footage playing on the giant screen behind him, the moment when the synthetic hunter exploded and he stood from the fire, his body torn but healing. You see this and call it unnatural. We call it Tuesday. Few in the crowd laughed nervously, others shifted uncomfortably, some simply stared. We are not here to conquer, we are not here to threaten, we are here because we earned it, not through bloodlines or power, but through sacrifice and grit, and the willingness to crawl through hell, if it means pulling one more of our own out. Shy whispered under her breath. He is not speaking for himself. He is speaking for every name carved into a stone back home. Cole lowered his hand and said, I am not special. There are thousands more like me, millions who are learning just how far they can go. We do not ask for fear, we ask for understanding, and if not that, then at least respect. High Speaker stood slowly and said, Earth will be granted full High Council status with all rights, responsibilities, and protections. Your people will be treated as equals, and your regeneration abilities will not be classified as threats but as biological marvels. A murmur spread across the chamber, some angry, some awed, but none dared argue. After the session, Hayes joined Cole and said, You just made half the galaxy respect us, and the other half afraid of us. Cole replied, Good, let them figure out which one they belong to. Shy walked up holding a data crystal and handed it to Cole. This contains new genetic patterns based on your healing response. If your people study it carefully, they may unlock even more potential and maybe pass it on to the next generation. Cole took it and said, maybe the next ones will not just survive, they will lead back. On Earth, news exploded across every channel. Children ran through streets, shouting, We are the unbroken. Artists painted murals of Cole and Haze standing in fire, parents whispered to their kids, "You are stronger than you know," and soldiers walked a little taller, knowing their pain had become proof of something greater in distant worlds where humans once worked as technicians or farmers. Or medics. They were now offered positions of leadership. Species once dominant began requesting human advisors. Security forces, medical researchers. They wanted to understand how Earth had created such defiance in flesh, but not everyone celebrated. In a dark room far from Alliance eyes, the Trinuk general who once served under Lord Zul watched the footage again and again, his claws tightening. "They rise because we let them," he growled. "But we will remind them that regeneration is not immortality." War would come someday again, because peace was never permanent among stars. But when that war came, the galaxy knew one thing. Humans would not fall easily. They would not surrender quickly. They would not bleed without purpose, because they were no longer fragile. The legacy of the unbroken years passed since the day Cole Mercer stood before the Galactic Council and changed the fate of humanity forever across the stars. Humans were no longer mocked for being soft or underestimated for being born from a blue planet. Instead, they were studied, admired, sometimes feared, but always remembered as the race that refused to fallen. The frontier worlds, young children played in fields under alien suns, wearing homemade armor and chanting, "We are the unbroken." Their laughter echoing through the canyons, not in ignorance, but in strength, because they knew what it meant to rise from ashes, because they knew that pain was not the end, it was the beginning. Cole had retired to a quiet moon on the edge of the Orion path, where the stars were brighter than cities, and the silence deeper than any speech. He often walked alone through the gardens growing without soil, a place where peace finally grew in his bones. But even in peace he kept one eye open, one ear tuned to the distant hum of war, because peace for humans was not the absence of conflict, it was the moment between two storms. Hayes became an ambassador, not for politics, but for people. He visited species once hostile and showed them how humans worked, how they healed, how they broke, how they got back up. His presence alone changed minds, because he carried the scars of 100 battles, and none of them had stopped. Hinshai returned to Draxel 1, where her research lab became a temple of science, and history scholars came to learn about the regeneration code, about the biology of defiance, but more than that, they came to understand the heart of a human, a creature that turned suffering into evolution and weakness into strength. Alliance itself reshaped. Treaties were rewritten, laws updated, fleets rebuilt with human advisors, now leading strategy and diplomacy. But not because humans had demanded it, because the galaxy had seen what could not be unseen, a human walking through fire and coming out stronger on Earth. The legacy spread deeper. Children born after the unbroken age carried traits never seen before: faster healing, deeper resilience, stronger will. Doctors saw immune systems reacting to diseases in ways once thought impossible. Not miracles, not magic, just humanity finally discovering what it had always carried deep inside. A statue was built in the Alliance capital, not of Cole, not of Hayes, not of Shy, but of a nameless human standing with cracked skin, eyes full of fire, and hands clenched at their side. The plaque beneath it read, "They got back up." In hidden corners of the galaxy, there were still enemies, still those who plotted, still shadows waiting to test the limits of human flesh and fire. But now, they did not whisper about Earth in arrogance. Now they spoke the name with caution, with respect, with memory. The unbroken were not a myth. They were not a phase, they were a turning point. Cole one day stood before a new class of cadets, not in armor, not with weapons, just his presence alone was enough. He looked at them not with pride, but with understanding, because he saw himself in their eyes. Said, "They will try to break you, they will try to define you by your pain, but what you do next is what makes you human. You will bleed, you will fall, but if you rise again, you become more than you were, and if you keep rising, they will never stop watching." He turned and walked away, leaving only silence and awe behind. Somewhere in the stars, a ship drifted past a dying sun, its crew injured, its systems failing, but the human on board stood up, despite wounds, despite odds, despite reason, and reached for the control panel, because that is what they Do they stand, they rise, they endure because they are not broken. They are the unbroken, the end.